young basswood tree. The interesting thing about them is they're a lot like willows and they're a lot like sumac. When you cut them down, they can grow right back after a few months. These are all young shoots after what happened over here when a beaver came in and cut them all down, put them out in the marsh and used them for his dams. This is a really young one. And they're growing pretty strong. In a few years they'll go right back to how tall they were just back in the spring. And you might be able to see the sumac beside me. This is how tall these basswoods were just a few months ago. They were cut straight down to nothing but their trunks, and they're growing right back up. Now the basswood tree is really, really useful. It's an incredible tree. And the great thing about them is they're almost anywhere in southern Ontario, southern Quebec, northern United States. I've seen them all over Wisconsin and Michigan. I've seen them all over New York State. They're fantastic trees. And their bark, there's a nice color to them. And when they get bigger, you can actually take this bark, cut it, score it, and bend it, and then sew it into a nice basket. Really beautiful baskets come out of it, and it's pretty strong stuff once it dries. However, that's not the only thing about the basswood tree that's useful. It is so useful that I can't list all the things that it's great for in just one video. So I'm actually going to do 3 videos listing just some of the things these basswood trees are great for. This first video is going to be all about the basswood's bark and fiber. The next video is going to be all about the wood, and the last one is going to be all about these right here, its leaves. The bark down here is a really good example. I'm just going to take off some of these young, smaller branches. As you can see, it's a really nice color. This color of it is all even. There's a couple of little spots on it. The color's changed. There's a little bit of a pattern to it, but it's a nice tone. And because of that, we know that the fibers inside are pretty strong, and they're going to be pretty interesting to work with. Same with willow, same with poplar. When the tone is a very interesting tone, has a very interesting and solid pattern to it, often the fiber inside is going to be very strong. Because of that, we know that this bark is going to be really important to us out here in the bush. The inner bark is the #1 trick to this. However, the outer bark is just as useful. If this was a bit larger of a tree, I'd say about wrist thick, maybe forearm thick, maybe even bicep, I would cut it down and I would score it down one way, peel it off the trunk, save the trunk for carving, and I would take that bark and I would score it down the bottom to give it kind of a smooth diamond shape to it. And I would use that scoring mark to bend up the bark and sew it on both ends, and I had a very nice little berry basket. I can even take that wood that I just saved, make a hoop for it for a handle, and there I go, a really nice little berry basket. However, the inner bark is just as important, if not in my opinion, even more important. And the processing for it is different for different methods. In some ways, you can just take the outer bark, leave it on there, take your knife, and simply score down the outside. I'm trying to hurry this up because we only have so many minutes on a YouTube video. Now, if I do that, I can then lift a layer of this off, and there I go. Inner bark is attached, that's where all the strength is. The outer bark can be left on because this is an expedient wrapping. I can use a constrictor knot, I can use a clove hitch, I can even use, in some ways, a prusik knot if I was using this to lash things to a pole or lash these to a ridge line. But I can lash a shelter together with just that. In fact, I do that quite often when I'm out in the field teaching how to build wigwams and teaching how to make smoking racks to make jerky or smoking hides. We just simply take this stuff, lash the saplings together, and often, interestingly enough, it's these saplings, these basswood saplings that are nice and flexible, that we use for the wigwams. This inner and outer bark mix is not the most efficient method, but it's the most expedient method. It'll get the job done, and if need be, with the outer bark still on, I can braid it, as I have been with this. I can just braid it. I'll keep it out of my mouth while I talk. I can just braid it, and it gives it a little bit extra strength, but more importantly, it's quick, and it's very strong, but it's not the most efficient. The most efficient methods is a process that I believe native people from all over the world learn from beaver. The reason I believe that is we have a nice little sapling over there. Actually, it was a nice sapling. And the beaver cut it down back in the spring, literally the night before I was coming out to actually harvest it myself. So I think beaver are a little smarter than we like to admit. And anyways, they cut it down back in June, and it's now September. It's mid-September, and if I show this later to you, you'll see these beautiful shoots about that tall, a little taller, and they're growing right back. And in a few years, they're going to be right back to being about as tall as this sapling right here. Very, very tall sapling. It'll do a great job just in a few years. So the great thing about basswood is it grows back every time, and because of that, you can just keep on harvesting it. Interestingly enough, just like red osier dogwood or just like willow, if you keep on harvesting the stuff every year, the harvested material is going to be getting better and better each year, because the wood that you're cutting it from, the tree that you're cutting it from, is having to grow straighter and straighter and tougher each year, and it's not going to have as many knots, it's not going to have as many branches, and that method is called coppicing. We're going to get into that later with the wood. However, that helps also with the bark material. The beaver took it from my trees, the lucky little guys. When I was canoeing one day, I came across one of their dams, and I had to cross their dam to get in through the rest of the stream. And I came across big saplings and shoots that were just jammed into each other, and a bunch of bark coming off it when my canoe rubbed up against it. And this is the inner bark of those poles, and I realized after looking at it, these were my trees that those little guys took away from me. So I'm going to take my bark back. And what happens is, after about a month or so, 4 weeks, 3 weeks of being left in the water gets rid of the little glue-like sap that's in the tree, and it gets rid of the sap very quickly by just going through slow-moving water. The acids and the chemicals that are in the marshland, as well as the bacteria in the marshland, make it so that the fibers become very loose, very soft, and very pliable. You get these long, extremely thin, paper thin, even thinner than paper in my opinion, fibers that if you keep breaking down, you can hear a couple of blue jays and some other birds out there. You keep breaking down, you get these really long but strong fibers. As you look here, I made it into a braid. And this braid is strong enough and durable enough to use it for a bow drill string. And that's just simple braiding. There's no fancy little trick to it. It's not an 8-plate, it's not a 4-plate, it's just 3 strands braided. You can see it's not finished yet, but it's really strong stuff. These birds are getting a little cranky with me. I guess I'm bothering them. However, other methods come along. Twining it and leaving it as is becomes really useful. As you can see with this stone axe, up here I lashed it, not the axe itself, but the wood, the red oak that I used. I lashed it to help protect it when it was being bent. And down here to help tighten it, I used basswood string, just to help tighten that up and keep it really secure to this stone axe. This is an ash netting shuttle, and in it I got about 15 feet of basswood fiber, and it's been twined just like you would see simple rope. It's S-twist, I believe, maybe Z-twist. I'm not quite sure right now which way I twisted it. And that 15 feet, if knitted properly around the gauge and kept on working, I could actually make a very strong net. And the nets are really cool because these nets can be used for everything. People will not believe how important a net can be to native people. You can use it to make a hammock. You can, of course, catch fish with it. You can make a backpack with it. You can make a shelter cover with it. It's a really cool trick. Everybody knows debris huts. You got to put a bunch of sticks on top of a ridgepole and put a bunch of debris on it. With a net, cuts it down even more. Tie one end of the net, tie the other end of the net, make it look like an A-frame tent, throw the debris on it. Done. The net holds all the debris up, less of it falls on your face, and it works very quickly.